You're listening to the micro version of the Savage Lovecast. www.savagelovecast.com.
If you're stuck in a relationship quandary, or if you're looking for sexual harmony, well, there's nothing you can't ask on the Savage Lovecast.
I'm increasingly afraid to look at my Twitter feed because it seems like every time I power it up and take a peek, some new terrible, awful, no good, rotten shit is going down. Nice, Baton Rouge, that coup this weekend in Turkey. I'm starting to engage in a little bit of magical thinking here as the pileup of terrible events keeps getting bigger, as they keep coming closer and closer together. I keep thinking maybe something terrible won't happen today. Maybe the New York Times won't land on my porch with another banner headline if I just stop looking at my Twitter feed or turning on the news or opening the little blue bag with the New York Times on the porch. Maybe if I stop looking, this shit will stop happening. Maybe me, myself, because I am so at the center of the entire universe, maybe I am personally creating a vacuum for terrible news that is sucking in all of this horror, all of this heartache. So, sitting here thinking, pivoting from that to maybe if I don't turn on the TV this week, maybe the Republican National Convention won't happen. Maybe Scott Baio won't be on national television at a major party's political convention giving a speech. Or that batshit insane bearded fuckface from Duck Dynasty, or Antonio Sabato Jr., someone those of us of a certain age now feel bad about having masturbated to many, many years ago in the early 1990s, or any of the other C-list celebrities Donald Trump is gilding his shit show with. Maybe none of them will speak and Donald won't be nominated if I don't look at Twitter or turn on MSNBC or open the New York Times in the morning and take a look. Speaking of celebs, Donald Trump has a whole bunch of, at best, C-list, if not LMNOP, QRST, V-list celebs lined up for his convention. And it's funny, our relationship to celebs when they dive into politics. When they say something that we agree with, their celebrity doesn't factor in at all. They're just right on, like we're right on. They get it. Like when I read this quote a couple of days ago circulating on Twitter. It's from an interview that Viggo Mortensen did with Marlo Stern for the Daily Beast. And Viggo, addressing the racism that Donald Trump has exposed, really exposed. It was always there, not too far under the surface. He blew the dust off the surface, and there it was. Viggo, right on Viggo, says, Trump is only saying in cruder terms what really started with Reagan, but then took flight with Gingrich in 94. The polarizing, race-baiting rhetoric of the Republican Party for the last several decades is coming home to roost. Trump is the logical conclusion, Viggo continues. He's not very nuanced in his diatribes, but he's not saying anything very different than what Paul Ryan, John Boehner, Dick Cheney, and Mitch McConnell are saying. All of these guys have been engaging in the same divisive, racist politics. Oh my God. Right the fuck on. Thank you, Viggo Mortensen, for saying what they should be saying on the front page of the New York Times. They should be saying on the nightly news as the lead. They should be pointing out that the Southern strategy, racist dog whistle politics, Ronald Reagan launching his campaign in a city in the South where 3 civil rights activists were murdered. Talk about a dog whistle there. Welfare queens, everything that's come out of the Republican Party for the last 30, 40 years has been tapping into, mining, inflating the sense of white grievance and this sense of an undeserving black and brown population that's being filleted endlessly by the federal government. And this is the bill coming due, the Republican base, the racist mob that the GOP has consciously assembled over the last 40 years, nominating a racist shitbag like Donald Trump. And I read that and I think, this man, this celebrity, this actor, whose film, A Perfect Murder, I caught on HBO this weekend. He's so hot. He's so right on. And then I kept reading Marlo Stern's profile of Viggo Mortensen and saw this. I trust Hillary about as much as I trust Donald Trump, said Viggo. I think she's dishonest. I don't think she has the interests of working people at heart. And I think she's shown that time and time again. All the things that Bernie Sanders said about her, I agree with. Except, of course, for Bernie Sanders now endorsing Hillary Clinton. Vigo doesn't agree with that. And that was a tough whipsaw. Like, oh my God, right on Vigo. Speaking truth to power or whatever. Yay, so right about the racism thing. And then, what? Vigo? Oh my God, so wrong. Shut up, celebrity. You're just a celebrity. Nobody cares what you think about politics when you say something that I disagree with politically. When you say something I agree with politically, right on. Anyway, fun fact, according to an analysis done by the New York Times, Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders voted the exact same way. They voted together 93% of the time. So Hillary Clinton is 93% of Bernie Sanders. And if you can't get 100% of Bernie Sanders, settling for 93% of Bernie Sanders is pretty fucking good as a compromise position, as a fallback. 93% of what you wanted. Boss, I'd like $100,000 a year raise. Can't do it, but here's $93,000 as your raise. No, fuck you. I quit. No one would do that. So I hope there's time now in November. Polls are tight. Nobody should be complacent here. There's time for Vigo to come around and vote for what he could regard as the lesser of two evils in the Trump v. Clinton race. In the Hillary v. Bernie race, which is over and done with, not that much less. You didn't have to settle for much less, 7% less. You're getting with Hillary than you would have gotten with Bernie. That seems like something an adult should be willing to accept. They're practically the same political animal. That said, and I feel honor bound to point this out, and it does undermine my point on accepting the 93%. Chimps and humans share 96% of their DNA. We are basically the same animals. And I don't think I could bring myself to vote for a chimp for president. Republicans, on the other hand, twice nominated a chimp for president. He stole an election in 2000 with the assistance of people voting for the third-party candidate because there was no difference between Bush and Gore. And then the Republicans nominated that chimp again in 2004. And he won. So careful. Careful what you do with your vote, because it can have real-world consequences for everybody out here in the real world, not in the celeb bubble. Viggo Mortensen, who's 50% right on. Batting 500, that's pretty good too. 50% right on. Vigo, I appreciate it. But I hope you come around on Hillary. And that's my message for everyone this week as we slog through the Republican National Convention, which is happening right now, despite my best efforts to blot it out and ignore it, to not fire up Twitter. Apparently that didn't stop it from happening. Also, I am going to be on Real Time with Bill Maher on Wednesday, tomorrow night, talking about the Republican National Convention. All right, coming up on this week's show, we have Wonkette's editrix, Rebecca Schoenkopf, here to talk with us about more Bernie v. Hillary, more election stuff. It's election season, sorry, but tons of your sex questions. And coming up at the end of the show, our African-American listeners and their calls and their thoughts about what it is like to live in this country at this moment as an African-American and what other people need to understand about that. Coming up after this. Today's episode of the Savage Lovecast is brought to you by Rocket Mortgage from Quicken Loans. Rocket Mortgage brings the mortgage process into the 21st century with a fast, easy, and completely online process. Check out Rocket Mortgage today at quickenloans.com/savage. Today's Savage Lovecast is brought to you by Me Undies. High quality, super comfortable, good looking undies. Get 20% off your first order when you go to meundies.com/savage.
This episode is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is the easiest way to create a beautiful website, blog, or online store for you and your ideas. Squarespace features an elegant interface, beautiful templates, and incredible 24/7 customer support. Try Squarespace at squarespace.com and enter offer code SAVAGE at checkout to get 10% off. That's squarespace.com, offer code SAVAGE.
Hi, Dan. So I've been with my partner for 10 years. We have 2 kids together. We have a generally very loving and calm, happy household, pretty low stress. Over time, we've periodically discussed being monogamish, and I think that I could handle it. I think emotionally I could handle it and physically. But a thing that gives me serious pause is he has a history of issues respecting pretty obvious social and sexual boundaries with people. Nothing like molesty, but just creepoid stuff, like things that happened early on in our relationship that I probably should have left him over include, him hitting on my family members, him hitting on his family members' partners. That's not to say that I wish I would have left him. I think things worked out okay, but they do demonstrate, issues. And he does have a history of molestation. Even to this day, when he drinks, he'll say and do inappropriate things, to people, just give people weird vibes. I feel like it's just kind of always lurking under the surface. All of this makes me seriously doubt that he has the capacity to sort of respect and follow any rules that we might put in place if we were to become monogamish. So I have a lot of trust issues around it, and I'm not sure if it's something that I should go forward with or not. One thing that I forgot to mention is that he also has an extremely high sex drive. You had a recent caller who I believe her compromise was like daily. I can very much relate to that. I can very much relate to almost everything she said. There seems to be no limit to his sex drive. I've done a lot of testing in this department, like, sexting throughout the day and seeing like how many times a day we can have sex if there is a way to sort of satisfy it. And it really never seems to be. It almost seems like this insatiable hole that the more you fill, the bigger the hole gets. So that's another reason that I have reservations about opening up our relationship that way. I also would like to point out that I'm not an idiot, so I imagine like all these things that I've told you, I'm sure that things have happened over the years that I don't know about, and that's fine. I don't have any issues with those. Like, I'm just wondering if we should open it up verbally with consent and boundaries and have discussions about it, if you think that's a safe thing to do, if you think that's even possible.
The answer to your question about whether or not to open up this relationship, whether or not to go the monogamish route with your husband, with his particular bundle of issues, it all hinges on how self-aware he is. Is he conscious of the problems that he has and has had sexually? Has he faced social consequences, if not legal consequences, for his actions and poor impulse control in the past? Has he faced any blowback? Does he know that his inability to read social cues and his impulsiveness when he is not constrained by a monogamous commitment has complicated his life, could really upend his life, could destroy his marriage, destroy his family, could, if he pulled something super stupid, wrong person, wrong place, wrong time, wrong act, land his ass in jail? Is he aware of all of that? Because if he is aware of all of that, maybe you could open this relationship up with the understanding that he needs you to act as his filter and his control. That it's not he is now free to run out there in the world and hit on people willy-nilly as he once did or as he used to, because that was a recipe for disaster and social blowback and potential legal consequences and marital consequences and familial consequences now that he is a married family man. But if working with you and you as his filter, you guys can be monogamish in the context of play parties, in the context of organized swinging events, in the context of threesomes that you arrange, that you are the driver, that he follows orders, that you set these things up for the both of you, that he turns to you for help and to game stuff out and to judge and assess whether or not his attentions would be welcomed in a particular circumstance or by a particular person. If he can filter that through you, and it sounds like an awesome responsibility for you, it sounds like potentially a crushing responsibility for you considering his sex drive, but how badly do you want to fuck other people? You say that this desire to open the relationship up, it partly emanates from you. And so the question then becomes how much responsibility for controlling his behavior, which you already have taken responsibility for in the context of this monogamous commitment, how much responsibility for controlling his behavior and its capacity, if it gets out of control, to upend your lives, are you willing to shoulder for the benefit, personally and for yourself, to fuck other dudes now and then or once in a while, or to do whatever it is that you're fantasizing about doing that doesn't involve him? If having that for yourself is important enough that you are willing to take some kind of parental-ish oversight of his without you, or with or without you sexual adventures, maybe you could make this work. But again, that all hinges on whether or not he knows about his problems, about whether he is aware enough of his issues with boundaries and with impulse control and with target selection to cede that to you, and to be grateful that you would help him in that way so that he doesn't destroy his family, tear apart the only home his children have ever known, potentially harm his marriage, potentially land his ass in prison or get himself fired. There's all sorts of terrible consequences that come with poor impulse control and hitting on the wrong people or lunging at the wrong people at the wrong time. So this is obviously a talk you need to have with him about what he knows and when he came to know it, and what control he's willing to give up to you in the hopes of perhaps having a little more sexual variety in his life going forward. Because if he can let you be the driver, maybe you can get to this destination, this monogamish destination. But if he can't let you be the driver, if the only thing that's prevented him from continuing to act out sexually in really inappropriate ways, which may tie to his history of abuse himself, of having been abused, maybe monogamy is the control that he needs, and the control that you need in your life to keep yourself safe and your family intact. Monogamy has its upsides. Non-monogamy, and I am here from the future to share this with you, can be complicated and requires a lot of emotional intelligence, a high emotional IQ, and self-awareness to successfully pull off. And if he doesn't possess those things, and he isn't willing to allow you to control when and where and how it happens for him, if that's indeed what he needs to do this successfully, I wouldn't recommend that you go there, frankly. I wouldn't recommend that you do it. One of our sponsors today is Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Get approved for a mortgage online in minutes using your phone or tablet. This completely online process helps you ditch the stacks of financial documents by using cutting-edge technology to make getting a mortgage more convenient than ever before. You can also safely share bank statements and pay stubs with the touch of a button. Check out Rocket Mortgage today at quickenloans.com/savage. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS consumeraccess.org, number 3030.
Hey, Dan. Howdy from Brooklyn. 40-year-old, not caring of orientation labels, in a monogamous relationship with a woman, married, father, everything's grand, into kink, very open-minded, but having a problem with self-doubt on my partner's end. We came to our monogamous situation together. We were in a relationship together, and then kind of came to this. And it's been wonderful. Lots of good times, lots of fun, fantastic sex life we have. She has some self-esteem issues. I realized that growing up in a patriarchal world as a woman, you're taught to be deferential. I think this is one of her problems, in that she tries to do what is cool in her mind and not what she's comfortable with. So we will talk about things beforehand, what we want from a particular scenario or a party or a date together with people or dates apart. And I'm fairly self-aware of my feelings. She, on the other hand, is a little bit more needs a little bit more coaching to talk about her feelings. She'll get upset with things afterwards, after I try to preemptively address them. So then I tell, which is a bit frustrating. So I try to get it out of her beforehand. Now she's in this pattern where she won't tell me afterwards that she was upset with something, but it'll manifest itself a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month later in something completely irrelevant, but painfully obvious that it is relating to the situation. She doesn't have the most confidence in herself. I don't know why. Again, she's wonderful, beautiful, sexy, GGG in many ways. But this lack of self-esteem it's affecting our life. We'll get into a giant argument afterwards. It'll be 2-3 days long, this drag-out process, and then we'll come to a resolve. Basically, do you have any tricks or tips or anything on how we can maybe shorten that process of coming to the realization and addressing what the real situation is?
Wish I could have gotten you on the phone, because I have questions for you. Like, what exactly are you guys doing that she feels bad about afterwards, sometimes weeks afterwards. You're very vague about these things, whatever these things are in your monogamous marriage that you're doing that are sandpapering your wife's insecurities, whether you feel her insecurities are rational or justified or not, whether she regards them as insecurities or not, that's a whole other issue. What are you guys doing? Whatever it is that you guys are doing, it's clearly not making her happy or working for her. You describe her as, in some ways, typically male because she's just not in touch with her feelings and she's not able to articulate them. But it sounds like she's being very socialized female, a woman here, socialized to defer to the wants and needs of the man in her life. So she is allowing things to unfold, going along to get along, putting your needs and wants first, and then feeling diminished, degraded, terrible, awful in the aftermath because they weren't things that she wanted to do or found pleasure in doing. So I would ask you, what are these things? Not how do I make sure she doesn't have a sad in the wake of these things, but what are these things? And why do these things leave her feeling unfulfilled or leave her feeling, I'm just going to have to guess at her feelings, I'm not talking to her, degraded, humiliated, diminished? What are those things? You're going to have to find a way to do those things differently, or you're going to have to find other things to do. Because the things that you're doing now that you never go into aren't working for her. And you are paying the price. Well, not the price. You are also paying a price in the end because of these projection transference fights that you're all having in the wake of. Because she feels she can't be mad about X because she consented to X because X was what you wanted, whatever that is. So she gets mad about something else. And then in the unpacking of that, you realize she was actually mad about X. That definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome. You keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. You keep going to these places with your wife sexually, and over and over again, there is bad feelings, sad feelings, negative fallout, fights as a result, as a consequence. Maybe you need to not keep doing those same things and expecting a different outcome. Unless you can reverse engineer into those things conditions or additions that make your wife feel more comfortable and more a part of it and less just a submissive consenting to it half willingly, or find different things to do, different adventures for you two to have together that you're both interested in, that don't leave either of you feeling angry, hurt, or sad. Whether you're wearing a suit or sweats, you spend almost 24 hours a day in your underpants. But instead of making a statement like Superman's tights under his everyday clothes, your underwear is probably kind of boring. MeUndies is here to change that. Every pair of MeUndies is made from sustainably sourced modal, a fabric that's twice as soft as cotton. Once you try them on, you'll understand why they're called the world's most comfortable underwear. And if you don't love your first pair of MeUndies, they're free. No questions asked. MeUndies has dozens of styles and limited edition prints to help you make a statement with your underwear, no matter who gets to see them. Shipping is free in the US and Canada, and you can save up to $8 a pair with the MeUndies subscription plan. Get the subscription or a single pair and get 20% off your first order when you go to MeUndies.com/savage. That's MeUndies.com/savage for 20% off your first order.
Hey Dan, I've had a long time fetish for wrestling. It's just been a huge turn on for me for the longest time. Recently, I found a guy that I can wrestle with, and he's just ridiculously hot. He wears like these tight Under Armour shorts when he wrestles, and I can see his jock strap. It's very sexy. There's no sexuality to it though, other than just me getting excited from it. And I feel lucky that I can do something like that also helps with me getting into shape. The problem is that he will say things. I think he's gay. I'm pretty sure that he's gay. But or at least bi, and he'll say things that are very awful about women. Or he has this huge chip on his shoulder towards women. And recently he sent me, I was just like, what did you do last night? And he sent me videos of him fucking other women and using really rough language. That would be great if the woman involved consented to that kind of talk and was okay with it, but I'm not sure that she did. I'm not sure what my position is as his wrestling partner to express my kind of disgust with that, or should I just cut ties completely?
Oh my God. Takes me back. The sick and transparent, angry misogyny of the tormented closet case who can't be mad at himself, so he's mad at the women that he's having sex with, kind of, sort of against his will, and focuses his rage and anger on them because they're somehow responsible for his predicament, because they're the ones at fault, because he is obligated to fuck them to be the straight man that he feels he must be to function in the society somehow. So rather than directing his rage at society like any healthy homo who's in the process of coming out or struggling with his desires, he focuses his rage and his anger at the objects of his enforced desire, or his desire that is extracted from him under duress, that he has to sleep with these women that he doesn't want to sleep with to be the man he's supposed to be, and so fuck these women. He's so mad at these women. And it comes out in this creepy mix of eroticism and rage. Why would you want to wrestle with that guy, is what I'm wondering. Not so much what you need to say to him to talk him off this He-Man girl haters misogyny closet case faggot club, but why would you want to be in a room with someone who felt that way about women? Because as I've said a billion times on this show, homophobia is misogyny's snot-nosed shitty little brother, which means that misogyny is homophobia's big sister. And someone who's a misogynist doesn't typically like gay people, and someone who's a homophobe doesn't typically like women much or respect women much. So, ladies, don't date homophobes. And gay dudes, don't wrestle or fuck or date or kiss or hook up with shitty misogynists, because they hate themselves too for being gay, which means they hate you for being gay. And being in the same room with someone who hates you and allowing them to have access to you in an intimate way, or maybe you can get away with a hookup with that person, but any sort of ongoing connection with that person is going to do harm to you emotionally. That don't have anything to do with that person. You can, on your way out, though, speak your mind to that person. I wouldn't wrestle with this guy again, but I would say to him, if I were you, dude, you have got to work on this. These videos where you are hate fucking these girls, are they into that? Do you just bust that out on them? Some women are into that kind of dirty bitch whore slut talk during sex. I hope those are the women that you're having sex with when you bust that out. I hope it's mutually pleasurable and fun and consensual, because if it ain't, that's some sick and twisted and shitty crap that you are doing to your sex partners. And I know you don't regard what we do together as sex, but I do. And I don't want to be one of your sex partners if that's how you treat your other sex partners. You don't have to tell him he's gay, even if you think he's gay. He could be bi. Don't misread that he gets a boner when you guys are wrestling for, not interested necessarily in the women he's fucking, and he could have all those conflicts about rage and misogyny and desire and who he's supposed to be as a man, and be a closeted bi guy, not necessarily a closeted gay guy. But you need to put the psycho down and back away from the psycho. You need to pull the singlet off and stride out of the wrestling ring. There are other guys who aren't so conflicted, who aren't so messy about their desires, about their sexual orientations, about their kinks. And I promise you, if he is sending you videos like this of how he treats these other people, he will get around in time to treating you just as badly, if not worse, because his relationship with you is more stigmatizing, more implicating than his relationships with them are, if indeed his conflict is around his sexual orientation. Run away. Go find a nice, muscly, healthy, together out gay or bi dude who shares your fetish, or straight dude who shares your fetish. They're out there, healthy ones. I promise you, you don't have to keep pinning this mess to the mat.
This episode of the Savage Lovecast is brought to you by Squarespace, the simplest way for anyone to create a beautiful landing page, website, or online store. With easy-to-use tools and templates, Squarespace helps you personalize your site and make it your own. Their sites look professionally designed regardless of skill level, no coding required. The templates make it easy to use, and their customer support is friendly and accessible. Get a free domain if you sign up for a year. Start your free trial today at squarespace.com. When you decide to sign up for Squarespace, make sure to use the offer code SAVAGE to get 10% off your first purchase. That's Squarespace, offer code SAVAGE.
Hi Dan, I'm a 27-year-old lesbian and I live in the UK. I've recently moved from one city to another for a job opportunity, and on my last night, my leaving party at the old city, my close friend sexually assaulted me. I trusted him to get me home after the party because I was quite drunk. Then I woke up in the night and realised he'd taken some of my clothes off and was trying to have sex with me. When I managed to get the words out to tell him no, he did stop. But the whole experience has left me shaken. My trust is completely violated, and this is a really close friend, and I'm completely disappointed in how he has behaved. I'm really struggling to settle in this new town. I've made the right decision to move, and I'm completely happy with that, but making friends and meeting people has been particularly difficult. I'm struggling to concentrate at work, I'm struggling to sleep, and I'm so angry that this has happened, and that I feel so vulnerable in a place where I should be focusing on my future and be excited about being here. I was wondering if you had any advice. I know this isn't an easily solved problem, but I just wanted to talk to someone and maybe open it out to you and your listeners to see if they had any words of wisdom. I have thought about writing him a letter. I don't want to report it to the police as I don't want to invite the stress, and I'm on the waiting list for counselling, but my situation feels pretty desperate and I really want to move past this feeling.
You say you don't want to go to the police because you don't want that added stress. And yet, listening to your call, and my heart goes out to you, listening to your call, it seems you're nothing but stress right now. Stress is all you've got. And maybe going to the police would be additional stress, but maybe going to the police and filing a police report, even knowing that the likelihood of a successful prosecution in a case like this is low, that would be something that you could do. That would be an action that you could take. In addition to writing him a letter, which I actually think you should do, in addition to writing that letter and sending that letter to him, confronting him about what he did and how violated you feel, and rubbing his nose, and hopefully his conscience, if he possesses one, in the ramifications of what he did and the effect it's had on you. He also, shortly after reading your letter, got a call from a cop investigating your complaint. Probably not a successful prosecution is going to come out this, of you filing a police report. But maybe the combo, the 1-2 punch of that letter from you confronting him and that call from the cop, hopefully the call he gets from the police about the investigation that they launched into his behavior that night, will result in him getting on the waiting list for counseling, will result in him realizing that it wasn't just your mental health and your physical autonomy that he messed with that night, but potentially could have derailed his life, his future that night as well because of the actions that he took. And maybe that would persuade him to never do this ever again to anyone else ever again. And some good would come of what was for you a tremendously traumatic experience. And the good wouldn't necessarily accrue to you personally. The good would come in the women down the road who would be spared. The women down the road that he might interact with or become the friends of, who he might not pull something similar with because of that 1-2 punch, because of the confrontation, because of the letter, because of the call from the police. And maybe that would be some comfort to you. Maybe that would be one way to alleviate your stress, not creating an obligation for you. You have to do what's right for you. You have to take care of yourself. You have to make your own choices. But maybe that thought would help bring your stress level down, would help you find a place to place this, a place to put this where some good may have come of it because of your actions in the aftermath, if indeed you can take these actions. Otherwise, how to cope? Go hang out with people who are your real friends. You live in London now? What a wonderful city. Go see some plays. Get out of the house. Find, if you can't get to a counselor because you're on a waiting list, find a support group in London, in the UK, for survivors of sexual assault, which is what you are. They typically don't have waiting lists. Many of them are open to all. Go and sit in a room with other people who have walked the stony path that you are walking right now and come through it on the other side, as well as seeing plays, as well as getting out of the house, as well as reading, as well as looking outward, not for distractions, but for more stories, for more input, for more experiences. You had this tremendously traumatic experience and you're sitting with it. Lay some new experiences down on top of it. Dilute that experience by continuing to have other experiences. I'm not talking about sexual experiences. I'm not talking about romantic experiences. I'm talking about experiencing things. I'm talking about being out in the world. I'm talking about not allowing yourself to shut down or not being shut down by this. But you asked for my advice, and I hate to be prescriptive, and I know you said you didn't want to go to the police, but my advice would be to write that letter, to go to the police, to get out there in the world. You say you're in a new place and you don't have many friends. Get out there in the world. Put yourself out there. You will meet people. That is how you make friends. And get out there and experience. Experience other things. Dilute this experience. Write that letter. I'm so sorry for the pain you're in right now. So sorry.
Hey, Dan. I am a cisgendered bi woman in my early 40s. I am in a fantastic primary relationship with a hetero man, and we are open or monogamous, whatever you want to call it. And he was in a long monogamous marriage that was largely sexless for, 15 years or so, and that ended a while back. And now that he and I are together, we are able to explore his kinks and my kinks in what feels like a really healthy and fun way, and the sex in the relationship is just great. We've talked a lot about how we want our relationship to go, and we're both totally fine with having an open relationship. I don't currently feel like dating anybody else, but I know that I have the ability to do so if I want to. But I have encouraged him to flirt with and date other people, and he has to some extent. And our agreement is that we have two requests or rules, if you want to call it, that one of them is that we use protection, and two, that we talk about it. And originally it was just that I didn't want us to feel like we were keeping any secrets together or secrets from each other, but now I feel like it's kind of something more than that for me. Apparently, I get really turned on when he talks about flirting with or hooking up with other women, and it's almost like I'm getting off on compersion. And I don't quite know what to do with that. I've looked online and I see some stuff about cuckold fetish and cuck queening, and everything I've seen there has a lot to do with humiliation and shame and people getting off on that portion of it. And that's really not what I'm experiencing. I'm super excited for him, and I don't know, just the whole idea of him being with somebody else really gets me going. And so what I'm calling about is there a name for this? I'd really like to see some porn or watch some erotica or read some erotica or something around that. And my other question is, how much does he need to tell the other woman that he's with? Is it okay that should he be telling them that he's telling me about it, or is this just a secret perving kind of thing? What are your thoughts?
There is a term for this, but it's going to feel like an awkward fit. Cuckolding, minus the degradation, minus the humiliation, minus the eroticized jealousy, is called hot wifing. And that's just where a guy is turned on by other men finding his wife attractive and sleeping with his wife, and sort of the affirmation of, my wife's really hot. Lots of guys want to sleep with her, and she sleeps with lots of guys, and that's really sexy. And it's not about him being displaced or his place being taken. He's just sharing his hot wife with other guys. And what you're doing here is kind of hot wifing, but it's your husband. So you're hot husbanding, which doesn't roll off the tongue quite as easily as hot wifing. But you could call it hot hubby. I'm hot hubby-ing. That also doesn't roll off the tongue quite as easily. Hot spousing. Maybe we come up with the gender neutral version. Hot spousing. There you go. You are a hot spouser. And you enjoy hot spousing with your hot spouse husband. As for what he needs to tell other women, so long as he isn't misrepresenting himself to these other women as available for a long-termish relationship or available for dating, so long as they understand that he's not looking for a girlfriend or a wife, unless you guys are poly, and then maybe you are looking for a girlfriend potentially for him, and he then needs to disclose the fact that he has a primary partner, his wife, you. He doesn't have to tell them that there's this added super secret jazzy benefit for his wife in these encounters that he's having with other women. He doesn't necessarily have to say, my wife pervs out on this. It turns my wife on when I tell her what happened, when I share these stories. He doesn't have to. I don't see the harm in him actually telling them. Now, maybe that added layer of kink would send some kink phobes running in the opposite direction. It would cost him some pussy he could have gotten, but I doubt it. I imagine that if he's disclosing, as he should, that he has a primary partner and is in an open relationship and this is okay with her, maybe one of these girls, maybe these women he's sleeping with will say, is your wife okay with this? And he can say, she's more than okay with it. It actually turns her on when I mess around. Turns her on. Doesn't have to tell her the rest. Doesn't have to tell her how much it turns you on unless her interest is piqued. And then how much more exciting for you would that be if he wasn't just sleeping with some other woman, but sleeping with a woman who got off on the fact that you got off on the fact that he was sleeping with her. And that would bring the circle all the way around. Every week at the end of the show, we play some comments from listeners who didn't have a question but had thoughts on the stuff we'd covered on a recent program. This week, we have calls from African-American listeners sharing their thoughts and their feelings about living in this country at this time as African-Americans. Before we get to those calls, and it's extended comments section, but it's really fascinating, really good. We appreciate everyone who called in and shared their thoughts, and we're really honored to have them on the program. Before we get to them, quick correction. A couple of weeks ago when we were talking about Philando Castile, I got his girlfriend's last name wrong. I called her Diamond Phillips when actually she is Diamond Reynolds. My apology for that brain fart. And now, some calls that everyone should listen to.
Hi, Dan. I'm calling from Tokyo. I'm a Black listener. I've been reading and listening to you for over 15 years now. I wanted to just say that watching what's happening in my home from Japan, I can't describe it. It makes me think, though, as a child watching the Nazis, news of them, and I would ask myself, how could good people let this happen to all these people? But I'm watching it happen to people I love and care for, and I can't describe to you the rage and the sadness and the depression that it causes me and many people here. And all I ask is that people do something, whether it's looking at the companies you work for and demanding they do something, or boycotting them and not buying their products, or just letting people know you care. History will look at us, look at everyone and say, what did you do? And I just ask the listeners who have given me lots of support, and yourself have given me lots of emotional support over the last 15 plus years, to just do something that matters and try to heal those who are right now angered and enraged, and maybe enraged at you, but just be kind and care and protect them. Please protect them.
The thing is, every time I see a guy killed who's Black on TV, in the news, it always reminds me of my personal life. I lost my brother to a cop shooting at his job. The cop was drunk, and my brother had gotten into an altercation with his manager, and they didn't have a weapon or anything, yet the guy shot him when my mom was outside waiting for him. And this happened 10 years ago, and it's just been hell in my family since then. When I see these things in the news, I just know that it's because they are judging us before they even get to know us.
one of the bigger things is understanding that black people are not treated as human beings in this country, and we never have been. We were sold as livestock, and then if you look at the Dred Scott decision, we have been told since day one that the promises made by this country didn't apply to us. What is more damning about America is the silence of my white liberal friends, the one who want to call me and tell me how much they're sorry about what happened, but I don't see them even standing up to their racist uncle at Thanksgiving. You know, the ones who share my posts on Facebook, and then when something completely racist is commented against on it, they want to say, well, I'm not here to argue. Well, guess what? Black people can't fix racism. White people have to do it. I'm gay, and gay people wanted me to stand up for Orlando, but where are those same gay men now? They're silent. Being black in America is characterized by pain and by fear and by rejection. Being a black queer is characterized by all of that, but also alienation, because we don't even fit in our own community. So if you want to do something, challenge your own racism, challenge racism of people who are close to you, and make sure there are social consequences for people who treat us like we're not human. I don't want to hear another apology, and I don't want to hear any more white tears. I want to see some white action.
It's a really hard time for those of us with a lot of white friends. Their outrage is new because now there's video cameras, and the white privilege of their outrage is frustrating. So they should tread lightly right now. Thanks.
With regards to what white people can do in a society that often brutalizes black people, you can lend your privilege. White people have privilege, and they have access to benefits like jobs and education and wealth, and you can lend that by, for example, if you are someone who routinely writes recommendations for kids to go off to college, well, find a black kid who is a great student and write a recommendation for him or her. If you're someone who people come to get a summer job or maybe even a full-time job for their white kids, find a black kid who is hardworking, who is in your network, and offer him or her a job. By lending your privilege, you can help spread the access that whiteness brings to black people who are often blocked out of that access, because police brutalize black people, politicians brutalize black people because we lack economic privilege. And one of the ways to overcome that is to empower economically people of color. And white people, you can do that by lending your privilege.
I feel like a lot of people are threatened by the Black Lives Matter movement. And the only thing that we're actually trying to convey is that we matter too. You know, like imagine a child saying to their parent, you know, I matter too. I deserve the same rights as you, the same human rights. There's really no reason to be threatened by that movement. And it's really something that everyone who has an interest in equal rights for all human beings should be able to get behind. And not, you know, really feel radical for taking that position. Black Lives Matter has been made to seem like this really radical anti-law enforcement type of organization or movement, and that's just not true. I really hope that everyone will wake up and see that this is a human rights issue, plain and simple, and I really just hope things get better from here.
Long time listener. Thank you for understanding that black people need a space to be able to speak out about things that are going on right now, because I'm connected to a lot of people through Facebook, and we're not being heard by a lot of our friends. And I can tell you quite honestly, as horrible as it is to have to endure the situations of all these shootings and killings of black men who are innocent and not even being able to survive their arrest, as horrible as that is, to have to endure the racism in this country, it's almost worse having to be friends with white liberals right now who don't shut the fuck up and give us space to be able to be angry about this. I got into a fight with somebody online because they were so all lives matter, because for some reason or another, Black Lives Matter isn't protesting peacefully enough for them. And it's like, fuck you. like we're upset. We're angry. And this is nervous laughter because I don't think any of this stuff is funny, but it's very, very difficult. So, like, the thing I would like to have out there to know for those who are not minorities, those who have not been through these situations, is to shut the fuck up and listen. listen, stand next to us, hold our hands, hold our backs, get behind us, and be with us. Absolutely. But I don't care if you're married to a black person. I don't care if you've had a child with a black person. I don't care if you stand next to a black person. I don't care if you spent the last 2 summers and 3 years in Africa. If you are not a black person, shut up and listen to us for a minute.
Now, as a black man, I'm afraid of the police. Let that sink in. When I see a cop, I don't feel comfortable, which is a shame because as a law-abiding citizen of this country who doesn't have a record, I should feel comfortable. But given the police's history with unarmed black men, I just don't trust them. However, it's not only black men who have suffered at the hands of the police. Let's not forget about women like Sandra Bland and Yvette Smith, and also members of the LGBTQ community whose suffering goes largely unreported. Also, I have to disagree with your statement that people should be forced to watch these videos. Personally, I can't watch any more of these videos because it's traumatizing to see people with my skin color get killed for no reason. Brenda Castile was murdered 24 hours after Alton Sterling, and that day I was sitting at my desk at work fighting back tears because through these acts of violence, we're constantly being told that we don't matter, and that couldn't be the furthest thing from the truth. Black lives matter. And by the way, to anyone who tries to silence us by saying all lives matter, that saying, Black Lives Matter, it doesn't mean that our lives are more important than yours or any other race. Black Lives Matter is a reminder that despite everything we've gone through in this country, everything that black people have gone through, we're human as well. Our lives matter as well. Treat us like it does.
Thank you again to everyone who called in to share your thoughts. We appreciate it so very much. And we're going to leave it there. 206-302-2064 is the number here at the Savage Lovecast. If you want to record a question or a comment for a future show, please give us a buzz, 206-302-2064. Go to humpfilmfest.com for information on entering Hump, my amateur porn film festival, humpfilmfest.com. Follow me on Twitter at FakeDanSavage. Follow Rebecca Schoenkopf, editrix of Wonkette, at CommieGirl11. Speaking of Twitter, Yaz Warrior tweets, Dan Savage is the devil's very own son. What a bunch of filth this man spews. But Tamara tweets, renewed my Savage Lovecast subscription, $35 for a year for some of the best content on the internet. Cheers to Fake Dan Savage. And cheers to you, Tamara, and thank you for that upbeat tweet in the wake of being all the Savage Lovecast is produced by the Devil's Own daughter, Nancy Hartunian, and me, and the tech-savvy at-risk youth, the Devil Squad. We will all be back at you next week with another installment of the Savage Lovecast.